A content creator comes to you, say he's, really on like the solopreneur side of things. What are some like typical challenges that you see from them and like some of the more common ways that you help them actually grow their business? Because I see a lot of people on the creative side kind of spinning their wheels with freelance work and they don't really, build on anything. And it's a lot of random
Yeah.
projects. And
Right.
so I don't know if that's maybe a common thing, but for the
Oh, yeah.
solopreneur, what's kind
Yeah.
of a go-to that you help them with?
Yeah. Well, I think create, and I say this coming from my own personal experience because I was the same way. We have this lone wolf mentality, right? It's
Yeah.
popular in a lot of industries, but I feel like especially as the creative type that's really passionate about their work. This is my work. This is my project. This is my piece. This is my art piece, right? Mine.
Yeah.
You're not going to go anywhere if you're doing it alone. That's probably, we could just end the podcast right now. Like, don't
There
do
we
this
go.
alone. You know what I mean? And so what I try to really illustrate to people is, everyone has a set of weaknesses and they have a set of strengths, and you need to put yourself in not just in your strengths, but your zone of genius. You need to be in your zone of genius where you're doing what fulfills you and you're doing what's actually moving the needle forward in your creative business, right? There's things that aren't moving the needle forward, right? Like creating a YouTube thumbnail or, sending an email or scheduling a call or whatever. Like these things don't move the needle forward in any way, but we get caught up in these busy tasks all the time. And so I like to ask the question of, what if you didn't have to do everything? What if you could just focus on maybe the art direction of a specific video? What if you didn't have to edit the video? Well, it's my work. And then I say, well, what if they did it just as good as you? Right. And it's one of those things where, like I said, people get wrapped up in their own work, but that's exactly the trap and the cycle that you continue going through. And you have to you have to take yourself out of the equation, right? You have to somehow increase your results without having to put more effort in.
Mm.
And how do you do that? And you have to get people to help you. You have to, people aren't going to care about your business and your art as much as you. And that's true. But if you can teach them and get as close to it as possible and let go of that perfectionism, that's way more powerful than you doing everything, because you're going to grow and you're going to get out of this hamster wheel that you're currently in.
Welcome to the Braddog Media Show with your host, Brady.
All right, everybody, please welcome the one and only Zack Kravits. Welcome to the
go.
Braddog Media Show.
Welcome. Thanks for having me, man.
My man, excited to get you on today. Like I was just talking about before, you're definitely known as one of the go-tos when it comes to, the creative side of things. Super innovative guy, and it's been fun to follow you along for a while now.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah.
Like I'm going through a crazy journey right now, which I'm sure we'll get into, but yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm glad we were able to make this happen. And I don't know, I feel like I've known you for a little bit now. This is a very laid back podcast. So I like that. It's kind of how my podcast is a little bit. I try to make it that very conversational tone. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm all about. So yeah.
Love it. Totally. Man. So obviously you're at the point now, you've developed such, a great skill set and had all these great experiences. And now you're on the coaching side of things. I'd love to take it back a while and kind of get into the journey and how you started it, because I don't really know like where you came from and how you got into creative and content and all that in the first place. So like, what even drew your interest? How long ago was that? I'd love to dive into that story a little bit.
Sure. It's kind of interesting. So I actually started in the fitness industry, believe it or not.
Okay.
What's interesting is I talk about kind of my backstory a little bit, and every time that I do, I meet so many other people that started in the fitness industry and then switched over to something else. So
yeah,
I don't know. I always find it fascinating, but started in the fitness industry. I was a personal trainer, super into lifting weights, and I learned a lot from YouTube and following like famous or YouTube famous vloggers and influencers and things like that, and got really drawn in. I was a big sports guy. I was playing sports all through high school. I was going to play college volleyball, decided not to last minute. And so the weights appeared and it gave me something to do. And over time, as I was watching these YouTube fitness influencers, I was really drawn into not just lifting weights, but their lifestyle. They were making so much money. They had, the girl, the car, all these different things. And I'm like, man, like as a teenage guy, that sounds freaking amazing. You know what I mean? So
yeah, right.
I was like, well, maybe I should start YouTube and start teaching, fitness stuff. And so I became a personal trainer, got certified, and started my YouTube journey by producing these videos, and they were god awful. They were absolutely terrible, just like anybody else starting.
Totally.
And and what I I guess shortly realized was that I really wasn't passionate about the content of fitness. When I became a personal trainer and started working with people, I was like more of a therapist than like actually getting results for people. But I learned a lot of valuable skills because you have to learn how to communicate with all sorts of different people and helping them out. So that was, I'm very grateful to have that experience, but I just didn't enjoy it. And so my videos were terrible. I was getting made fun of, my friends, for putting myself out there because nobody was doing that at that time.
What year is this?
Well, people were doing it, but just in my inner circle, like my friends and stuff,
okay.
like it wasn't really the cool thing to do. Like I'm from LA. You walk out in the streets of LA and people are vlogging everywhere. And it's like, that's the norm here. You know what I mean? But you go to, I grew up in Chicago, and obviously it's a lot more popular now, but back in, to answer your question, I think it was 2014.
Okay. Yeah. That's
like
pretty
that.
early.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of early on. So I was getting made fun of my friends. I was just embarrassed. Like these videos were really, really terrible. I've got some on YouTube if you want to go check them out. But basically I started to become more obsessed with the camera because of how bad my videos were. And my motto became for the channel was, I'm going to make my next video better than the last. Like that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to set out to do. And so I really started diving deeper into the skills of filmmaking. And as I started to just get into my own creative world and experiment with things and started having fun with it, that's when I actually started to build a little bit of a following on YouTube and started to gain some traction. And instead of becoming this fitness influencer that I wanted to because of all the glory and the spotlight, I started getting hired by fitness influencers to film their videos because I was getting a lot better and I was doing these videos in my own unique way, and just having fun with it. And that's when my vlog series kind of became popular with people. That's kind of what I became known for. The series called Rambling Road, which was my vlog series, basically a show about nothing, kind of like Seinfeld.
Love it.
But I made it cinematic, and I told these little stories that people just liked, and they really related to it, So I started working with fitness influencers, started getting my name out there, and over time I kind of branched out, and then I was able to work with some really big time people that had big businesses, started doing work for lifestyle entrepreneurs like a Lewis Howes and people like this, and started doing some cool work. I did a project with G-Eazy. I did a project with Pusha T, and started, just diving into these really unique circles that this little device, this camera, allowed me to, get into. That it's just insane when I'm thinking about it right now. I'm like, oh my God, like, how can a little device get you into all these like circles that seem so
Right.
under wrapped? You know what I mean? So started doing that, started making really good money. I moved out of my parents' house, which was great. That's a huge win. Woo.
It's a big step.
Big step. Yeah. And really excited. But again, over time, started learning some valuable lessons. I was getting burnt out. I was working 14, 16-hour days. I was gone every single month, traveling at least once a month. And I was just in this endless cycle that I just didn't know if I was ever going to get out of, And so I needed to make a change. I was burnt out. I wasn't working on my personal brand as much. It was all client work, and it wasn't really something that I enjoyed as much as I thought I would. I really had a message and a voice to share with people, and I really wanted to grow my personal brand and start, helping my audience more. And so I came out with my first filmmaking course and started to kind of transition into more of this coach type of hat that I'm wearing now. And that's what I'm doing full time now. I made that switch, and in 2019 was the first year that I decided not to take a single client. So I challenged myself. I'm like, I started making some good money with selling these digital products, and I started building this really cool community within not just my social media, but within these courses and products that I sold. And I started that a little bit towards the end of 2018, but I put it out there, and I was making just as much money, if not more, from those things than I was with my client work. Like my best client, I think at the time, was just a little over a 10K client, which is phenomenal. It's 5-figure clients. I mean, it was amazing. I was so grateful. And then I put out my first product, and I made almost 12,000. So I made a little bit more. I'm like, whoa, wait a second here. Hold up. What's happening? And, and so I started it for selfish reasons. I'm like, I got to get out of this trap. I need more freedom back in my life. Like, what am I going to do here? But then I made another mental shift where I'm like, okay, people are depending on me now, and I'm making an impact in people's lives. And so it became more than me now. And now it's a whole bigger vision. And that's what I've dedicated the past couple of years now in doing is helping people take their creative businesses to that next level and get them out of the trap that I was in not too long ago. So that's my story
hey, that's amazing.
In a nutshell. Yeah.
Love it. That's crazy how that all ended up happening, man. Does it feel like this is so much more of your passion and helping businesses grow rather than what you were doing before with client work? I mean, how much more rewarding is this side of things?
It's exponential, because when you get like a comment or even a DM, like it's really like, I'm beyond grateful. But there's something about that in person, or like us right now, where we're talking face to face virtually, but we're still communicating, that is just way more fulfilling than like a comment or something like that will ever be. And then when you start getting, the feedback from them saying, hey man, like this, you've changed my life. I've gotten that a handful of times, which I'm like, excuse me.
Well,
or even just like, dude, like I've tripled my income or doubled my income because of something you said. I'm like, oh, wow. And sometimes like, sometimes you don't even know, like we were talking about before we started recording, sometimes you don't even know the people that you're impacting. You know what I mean? Like, what's really interesting, I talked about this on I think another podcast I was on recently, but the people that come into my program, my coaching program, is somebody that I don't even think ever commented or ever sent me a DM. It's just like a name that I'm like, who are you? And then I find out later, like, dude, you've helped me so much, blah, blah. I just don't comment. So like
Yeah, it's crazy.
that, I've gotten that so many times where it blows my mind. You're impacting people. You don't even know what you're doing. And sometimes you need just a little bit of that reminder occasionally here and there to be like, okay, I'm really doing
Yeah.
something right here. I'm making this bigger than myself. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. And it's been so cool to watch. I mean, obviously I'm getting, and everybody following you gets, the benefits of growing their creative efforts and content efforts
Mm-hmm.
and everything like that. But it's also cool to see your impact on things. And, I can see how rewarding that must be. Man. So like, say a content creator comes to you, say he's, really on like the solopreneur side of things. What are some like typical challenges that you see from them, and like some of the more common ways that you help them actually grow their business? Because I see a lot of people on the creative side kind of spinning their wheels with freelance work, and they don't really, build on anything. And it's a lot of random
Yeah.
projects. And
Right.
so I don't know if that's maybe a common thing, but for the
Oh yeah.
solopreneur, what's
Yeah.
kind of a go-to that you help them with?
Yeah. Well, I think create, and I say this coming from my own personal experience, because I was the same way. We have this lone wolf mentality, right?
Yeah.
It's popular in a lot of industries, but I feel like especially as the creative type that's really passionate about their work, this is my work, this is my project, this is my piece, this is my art piece, right? Mine.
Yeah.
You're not going to go anywhere if you're doing it alone. That's probably, we could just end the podcast right now. Like, don't
There
do
we
this
go.
alone. You know what I mean? And so what I try to really illustrate to people is, everyone has a set of weaknesses and they have a set of strengths, and you need to put yourself in not just in your strengths, but your zone of genius. You need to be in your zone of genius where you're doing what fulfills you and you're doing what's actually moving the needle forward in your creative business, right? There's things that aren't moving the needle forward, right? Like creating a YouTube thumbnail, or, sending an email, or scheduling a call, or whatever. Like, these things don't move the needle forward in any way, but we get caught up in these busy tasks all the time. And so I like to ask the question of, what if you didn't have to do everything? What if you could just focus on maybe the art direction of a specific video? What if you didn't have to edit the video? Well, it's my work. And then I say, well, what if they did it just as good as you? Right. And it's one of those things where, like I said, people get wrapped up in their own work, but that's exactly the trap and the cycle that you continue going through. And you have to, you have to take yourself out of the equation, right? You have to somehow increase your results without having to put more effort in. And how do you do that? You have to get people to help you. You have to, people aren't going to care about your business and your art as much as you. And that's true. But if you can teach them and get as close to it as possible and let go of that perfectionism, that's way more powerful than you doing everything, because you're going to grow and you're going to get out of this hamster wheel that you're currently in. So I think a cool exercise, just to give people listening something tangible, is the energy bubble. I've talked about it on my Instagram. I don't know if you've heard this, but
yeah, I have.
Simply ask. Okay, cool. So simply,
good stuff.
all you got to do. Yeah, it's someone taught this to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so obvious, but duh. So all you have to do is draw a circle, call it your energy bubble, and ask yourself, what are the things that give you energy throughout the day? And most of the time for creatives, it's not editing. Sometimes it is, if you do want to edit, like that's fine. You can edit or whatever. But there's a lot of things within that whole process of creating videos and whatever it is that you're doing in your business that don't give you energy, that suck energy away. So if you can write down all those things that give you energy in that bubble, you can start to come up with a bigger picture of, okay, these are the things that I should really be focusing on. Then do the opposite. Think of all the things that, like, when you have that reaction of like, oh God, I got to do this. God damn it.
Yeah.
I really don't want to do this right now. Like, whenever you have those thoughts, or like, those are the types of things that you need to write outside of the bubble. Those are the things that suck the energy away. And once you do that, you need to ask yourself, okay, as fast as possible, how can I either eliminate this from my life by just eliminating it because I don't need to do it, or how can I automate this? Right? Is there a way to automate a process or of some sort? Like, if you get an inquiry from a client or something, how can you just automate an email response? Like, can you come up with a program? Can you, buy a piece of software or something? What's your, CRM or whatever, if you want to get all fancy, but how can you automate this process? Right. And then number 3 is, can you outsource it? And then start getting into actually paying other people for your time back, because that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have this struggle of doing that because it's not so tangible, right? When you like pay for someone to do something, it's not as tangible as like, buying a camera or a new computer. But you're essentially buying your time back, which is then going to produce more money. Anytime that you bring somebody on, they should be 3xing your results. And if they're not, then obviously that's a problem. But yeah, those are kind of the 3 questions that you should be asking yourself for all the things that don't provide you energy. How can I eliminate this, automate this, or outsource it in some way as fast as I possibly can? And if you don't have the money, which is the biggest excuse, I don't have money to outsource this or whatever, this is where collaboration comes into play. How can you collaborate with your creative community and do things for each other? There's so many options if you become resourceful enough to take some of these things off your plate and help other people. Because someone else, a buddy of yours, he might hate doing After Effects, but you're like an After Effects wizard, and then you could put that on your portfolio or something. Like, there's ways to collaborate that don't make it so energy draining for you. Is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
that was a super long-winded answer. Sorry about that.
No, it's great. No, and I mean, it's funny you bring that last one up. That's something I've like personally been working with the last like year or so, is incorporating more help. Man, I mean, I'm not strictly a creative person. Like, I'm more on the marketing and advertising side, but even I, got stuck in that lone wolf mentality a lot of times, and it's tough. But that's interesting you bring that up, is like one of the main issues that creatives work with, because I can totally see that. I mean, they take pride in their work and want to, keep credit for everything, but that could be holding them back at the end.
Yeah. Well, especially with the editing. I know I bring editing up a lot, but that's really like, that's the biggest problem with editors, because with editing, when I was editing my videos, you sit down for 6-7 hours at a crack, and like, where's the day go? You know what I mean?
It's gone.
And if you can bring somebody on that maybe even is not maybe at the level that you're at or whatever, if you get really good at stating or communicating what your vision is, if you can get really good at that skill set, then the editing stuff, having somebody edit that project, becomes a lot easier. Because what is editing at the end of the day when you're putting stuff on the timeline and, putting all these like different things, these little edits and whatnot, like, it's really just labor. It's really just manual labor at the end of the day. If you have someone in your ear saying like, this is the flow, this is cut here, you know what I mean? And you're going to bring a lot of time back into your day by doing that.
Yeah, I love that. So the time aspect of it is huge. And what I love about the energy bubble, it's not even just a time thing, but things that mentally drain you, that goes even further than time, where it's like, not only are you taking so long to edit or whatever it may be, you're also drained energy wise to do the things that then produce you more money, bring in more business. So it's
Yeah.
it's multifaceted, and it's really interesting.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I got a few listener questions, a couple really good ones.
Let's go.
So I wanted to dive into one especially, and it involves your YouTube channel. So, and it's interesting because you're definitely not as active on YouTube these days as you were in the past, but how did you go about, and this also involves the personal branding side of things, but how did you really grow your personal brand through YouTube? And like, the question was phrased, how did you efficiently grow your YouTube channel? Which is something I'm curious about because,
Yeah.
I think that's a more valuable way to grow a following, over
Yeah.
time as your audience continues to grow, which it really appears that, you've done.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I'm the right guy to answer that, but because it doesn't feel so efficient. I've had to
Really?
go.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, like I kind of stated earlier with the beginning of my story, when I really did start to grow my audience is when I stopped looking at everybody and I really honed in on what felt really in line with what I want to create. And I started just creating for myself. And I started looking at different sources of inspiration that just felt good to me. I didn't care what other people were doing. I didn't care, what the typical vlog looked like. I wanted to create something that I knew I wanted to watch, a few years down the road, 5 years down the road with my family, with my friends and things like that. I think you can play the algorithm game. And I think there's a way to play the algorithm, create what you want to create, and do kind of a mix of both. I didn't really play the algorithm. I didn't play the game. I was just creating and I was having fun. And I think that's where if you're going to start a YouTube channel, I think that's the base or the foundation that you need to have is creating things that really fill you up. And then once you start building an audience and things like that, you can kind of make it bigger than you. And then it's more about serving and being, because then people are depending on you because you're that little escape for them throughout the day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about you, but I always go on YouTube because I'm looking for some type of escape, either to just kind of relax, to switch off the business brain, whatever it is, right? You're becoming kind of that little piece of escape. So for me, I think if you want to grow a channel and just get better at creating, I think looking at all kinds of sources of inspiration and then you recreating that, whatever you like. If you see a scene in a movie, which is what I've done, I would watch movies, TV shows. I was super into filmmaking and I'm like, I'm going to put that scene in my vlog. And that's how I got better at the timing of edits and keeping people engaged and storytelling and different compositions and things like that. As soon as you learn those skill sets and you can steal from those different scenes and whatnot, then you can start making it your own. You'll get skilled enough where you can start making it your own type of video. So for that person asking, I think my best advice is literally reverse engineer what inspires you and recreate those things. And then once you get really skilled at that, over time, start turning it into your own thing and kind of make it your own twist, if that makes sense.
Got it. Yeah. That's super interesting. And I mean, I've used that like similarly in things I've worked on because it's really almost impossible to exactly copy somebody. You're naturally going to start to throw your flair in it. So find something that's really cool that somebody else is doing. And at first, just try to copy it. And next thing you know, it's going to be your flavor.
Yeah, you don't even have to upload it. You know what I mean? Like if it's really like a like it's a clone of somebody. Like for example, Sam Colder.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing Sam Colder videos, and it was like inspired by Sam Colder. That's all fine and whatnot. But I would have if I really was inspired by Sam Colder, I would have created that video and and just kept it to myself. If it's literally like a clone of that, yeah, I mean, you don't have to go actually post it, but you can start small. Like if you're really new, create those pieces on your own time, and then once you start getting better, and you make it your own twist, then you can start publishing it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so next thing, I'm really curious about the personal branding side of things, because I think a lot of times, and up until a couple years ago, I was kind of caught in this too. You're so focused on client work, you're not really putting that effort in on your personal brand to be able to create that longevity for yourself and make a name for yourself. What are some ways that content creators can begin to stand out? And there's so many trying to emerge, through social media, especially like Instagram. What are some ways to stand out and kind of make a name for yourself that's unique?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think because everyone is so talented, and not saying that you're not talented enough to just stand out from your work, because there are those people that are just that next level that bring just because it's difficult to grow more and more. It becomes more difficult to grow on these platforms like Instagram and stuff, because there's so many people on and there's so many talented people. But like I said, I'm not saying, people that are listening right now, I'm not saying that you're not talented. I'm talented, but and you might be that next level where your work could literally just be so good that it just stands out from the rest. There's this one guy that I found around like 4,000 or 5,000 followers, because one of my buddies reposted his work, and I'm like, whoa, this guy, like, he doesn't even need to show up on camera, like stories or anything. This guy just needs to post his work. And sure enough, I think he's at like 30K now very shortly, just because all these artists are reposting his work because he's that good. That's like the 0.1%, not even the 1%. That's like the 0.1%. You could be that person, not saying you're not going to be. But for guys like us, where, we're talented, but maybe not that 0.1%, something that I think I've been good at is just connecting with my audience in a deep way, where they're like, man, this guy understands me. He gets me. He understands like what I'm going through. And I think I have not mastered, but trying to get there is by thinking about this person and just solely focusing on one person when I'm creating. So every single post that you see on my Instagram profile, I had one person in mind that I'm trying to serve in some way. So I think that is because when you try to help a bunch of people and get your message out there, I got to help all these people, that's when you can come off just like super generic. And I know this because when I create a post and I know it did well, it's not about the engagement and things like that. It's about people DMing me or messaging me saying like, dude, like, how'd you get inside my head? Like, that was exactly what I was going through. And like, whenever I get those comments, then I know I'm on the right track there. And more often than not, those are the posts that have that more virality, that get out there a lot more. So I would say deep connection. I also think creatives hide behind their work. They hide behind their art, their portfolios, their photography. There's so many creatives that aren't showing face, aren't doing Instagram stories, showing their personality, showing behind the scenes. And I think that's a huge missed opportunity, even though it's super uncomfortable to show up on camera, especially for an introverted photographer like I was. It still am introverted, but yeah, I mean, that's a huge missed opportunity, because you're missing that connection element. And I don't care how talented you are, you can always add that. It's just going to take you to that next level. So I would say, to answer your question, I would say connection and thinking about serving that one person, whether it's with, getting better at photography. So if you're just a photographer and like, you just love sharing your work, like, how can you help other photographers get to your level? And just thinking about that one person that you could help.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, humans connect with humans more so than humans to artwork or a picture. The personality is such a huge component of a personal brand. And I mean, obviously, right? it sounds obvious,
Yeah,
but
people love people.
yeah. Do you have anything for 2021 that you think is a super underrated style of content, or something that you're currently working on that you think is going to be unique? Maybe it's like something along the lines of Instagram Reels. I've seen you put out some really interesting ones there. Where do you think
Yeah.
some opportunity is in 2021?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Oh man, where are some opportunities? Oh boy, you might have stumped me there.
It's tough, right? I mean, there are all sorts of
Yeah,
content these days, but it's like, where should a creative have their focus? Because it's like, especially with
yeah,
Instagram, you have pictures, uh, 3 different ways to upload video, whether it be Reels, standard video,
hmm
IGTV. It's like, where should somebody's attention be? And, does it
yeah,
just depend on the person, or like, how do you go about that?
yeah. I think it's kind of a lame response, but I still think authenticity is the biggest separator. It's still to this day because so many people are not authentic with their content and the way they come out and things like that. Like, us creatives, we go through so many hardships and battles mentally and things like that that nobody wants to share or talk about. They don't want to talk about mental health. They don't want to talk about if they're having a bad day or whatever because Instagram is so much of a highlight reel. So if you do want to separate yourself right off the gate, I think sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it is going to be your fastest, biggest separator right off the gate. And that's something that I hope that I have done, and that I want to improve and get better. And that was one of my intentions for this year, is to show more of who I am online and just talk about things that are going on, because that's how I just have been able to create such a cool community where people come to me and say, hey, like, I'm feeling this way too, blah, 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 blah. I mean, if you want to make an impact, that's your answer right there, is being vulnerable. Vulnerability is such a massive strength that people shy away from because they're scared of how they're going to come off in their highlight reel of Instagram. So yeah, I know that's kind of maybe a lame answer, but that's how I've built my business. So
Right. No, that works.
I really, yeah, that's something I feel very strongly about. Yeah.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I think it, probably depends on the person. So it's almost like the format doesn't matter as much as the quality behind it.
Yeah.
I
think the perfect grid, having this perfect, pretty grid, and, I try to have a grid that I'm proud of and things like that. And it's something that I'm letting go, but I don't think it's as important anymore. Depending on what you're trying to do. Because there's some guys on Instagram that still show a lot of value, that have this like perfect grid, and they're growing very quickly. They've kind of filled the gap in the Instagram space. But I just personally, I think it's becoming less important of having that perfect grid. I think good quality content, but vulnerable, authentic content is going to win over that perfect, pretty grid every time. Just my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. I almost feel like that was I don't know if I would say a fad, but it was a thing that everybody focused on. And sometimes it was like too perfect. And it was like, this seems unauthentic, you taking care of
right.
and paying so much attention to the appearance of your grid. And I don't know. So I do agree with that one.
Yeah. You become more of like just a brand and not that person behind the brand.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and people typically, I just from what I've seen, if somebody has a professional brand on Instagram versus their personal brand, I would say like 8 out of 10 times their personal brand has more followers than their professional brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, I mean, like, obviously the big one, like Gary Vee has way more followers than VaynerMedia. Chris Do has way more followers than The Future. People want to connect with people, like we were just talking about before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are great examples.
Yeah, That's pretty interesting. Man, so I mean, you touched on it a little bit of like one of your goals, at least for 2021, but what does the year hold for you? Like, what are you looking to get into?
Oh man, that's a great question. So this has been like a huge mental period of growth for me. Like I'm having to step into the shoes of someone that, doesn't just have a multiple six-figure business, but somebody that has a multiple seven-figure business. And I've had to become somebody that really scares the living shit out of me, really.
Yeah.
Last year, 2020 was our best year financially for business, but it was probably the hardest year mentally for me because of just constant growth. Like I think a huge misconception is that when you grow and you start to reach higher levels of success, that it becomes easier. Like for example, people think, money problems just go away, right? But your problems never go away. They change, but they never go away. For example, if you are just, and I think I actually created an Instagram post on this. If you are just starting your business right now, and maybe one of your concerns is paying your bills, paying rent, paying groceries, things like that. As you grow, you're probably not going to worry about those bills anymore, but you might worry about paying your employees, paying contractors, having a big enough launch to cover costs and things like that. And it's the same feeling as if, you had to pay for those groceries. There's the same problems. There's the same thought, like feelings and emotions. It's just a different problem. And people just don't, because, I'm in that process. Like I'm getting out of a different version of me. So I'm going through this and I'm learning these things as I go. I'm like, oh wait, I still feel the same way. Nothing changed here.
Crazy.
So it's just fascinating. Yeah. And so growth is just, it's just a hard thing, like we just kind of recently moved into a new apartment from like a really small 1-bedroom apartment. And I started having all these feelings of imposter syndrome and like, who am I to have a nice apartment? Like, am I worth it? All of these negative thoughts that you will experience more of as you continue to climb. Another one is experiencing more, negative experiences with a client or customer. As you bring in more customers, just speaking from strictly a numbers game, you're going to have more people that will want a refund or more people that just didn't like your work because you're working with more people, right? It's just, strictly a numbers game. So more people, you're going to have to deal with those situations. You're going to have to deal with more negative comments. If you have a bigger audience on YouTube, you're going to get more hate comments, it becomes more of everything. And so you really have to dig into somebody that, you have to be a different version of yourself essentially, because what got you where you're at right now is not going to get you where you need to go. And I think another misconception is we have all the tools, the power, the resources to become that person right now. And we kind of shy away from it because we want to stay comfortable, because it feels good, it feels safe. Our brains try to protect us, and it's scary. Growing is scary, period. And not many people, I think, understand that quite yet, but they will eventually.
Yeah.
That's what I've been going through is those struggles. Yeah.
Struggle of growth, man. So like along the lines of that, what kind of team do you have? Who all works with you?
So that's a funny question, because I've had to let go of some people, unfortunately. As I'm growing, you understand the things that you need and the things that you don't need. When I talk about hiring and bringing people on and outsourcing different things, I think people hesitate to do that because they don't want to waste money. And yet it's not really, I mean, I guess you could look at it as like wasting money, but it's really more learning lessons and understanding what is it that you actually need right now. And so I'm in this process of finding out what I actually truly needed. And for me, a lot of that is is copywriting and emails and things like that. And cause I absolutely hate it. And then I have I have a video editor, a podcast editor, and things like that. And then an assistant as well. But, last year I guess recently, but it was last year, I let some people go because those were roles that I just didn't need. And what I'm learning is there's two things that happen when you try to bring people on and collaborate and hire contractors. One thing is you're attracting the wrong people. If you're a B player, how can you expect to bring on an A player? You know what I mean? You have to rise to the occasion. And so I was maybe a B player and I wasn't bringing in A players. And so I'm like, no. And I think people are so quick to judge and be like, man, these people just suck. These people are not good. It's not really that. It's actually, no, you're not good. You're not okay right now. You can't handle an A player, right? So at that time I was like, I couldn't handle an A player. I had to step up and learn better communication, better leadership. I recommend people to get a VA, everybody, no matter really what stage you're in. I mean, there's so many different ways to get a virtual assistant these days from different countries and things. You can get a great VA that are happy, that are so blessed to work with you for $6-7 an hour in their country, right? And it's just a great value because you learn so many things when you bring somebody on, because they're not going to work unless you do something with them. You communicate, you communicate in a way that they understand and do the work that you want them to do. Leadership, you have to be a leader. So I think most people should have at least that experience of having some type of virtual assistant. Where was I at? I was talking about, attracting the right people.
Right.
So that's so that was number one. And number two is hiring the wrong role. So that was something that I did as well. I wasn't hiring someone that fit what I needed to do. And it just didn't work out. So I don't know if that answered your question, but those were some of the things that I learned. Yeah.
Geez, I was just curious about the team you're working with, but I guess so you're in that stage of figuring out what kind of team you even need, and that's an interesting situation.
I have friends that have much bigger businesses than me that wiped out their entire team because they learned those exact things that I just talked about. That happens. And then they bring on their next person is that A player that they've been looking for the whole time. And I think you just got to get your hands dirty. And so I was in a period in my business where I was just getting my hands dirty. I was just bringing people on and letting certain people go really quick, hiring fast, letting go fast. And now I'm starting to get into that process of knowing what role that I really need right now. I still have my podcast editor, video editor. I still have those people that I really need. But what is that next person that's really going to 3X the business and really take time off my plate that I can do the things that I want to do that fulfills me and moves the needle more in the business.
Man, that's super interesting, but I'll be excited to follow along and see all the growth that comes of it. Cause I know, big things coming for you in 2021. So I'm excited to follow along. Where can people check you out at?
Instagram is great. Send me a DM. I respond to everybody. I literally respond to everybody. I love the DMs. You can always shoot me a DM. You can come hang out on the podcast, Ramblin' Radio. That's something that is a big area of focus for me this year is really going hard on the podcast. And so if you want to come hang out there, Ramblin' Radio, or just my Instagram, Zack Kravits, ZackKravits. Not like Lenny. Lenny's spelled with a Z. But I'm not nearly as cool as Lenny, unfortunately. Come hang out for sure.
Awesome. Everybody go follow Zack. Ton of value there. So I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been great.
Dude, appreciate it. This was fun, man. We'll do it soon.
Sounds good. Let's go.